For a lot of us, spiritual practice can feel like it's boxed into one little corner of our lives, right? The prayer room, maybe a few minutes in the morning. But what if that's only half the story? Today, we're diving into this because there's a much deeper, more integrated path that brings our spiritual life out into the world.
So let me just ask you this straight up. Does your spiritual routine ever feel, disconnected from everything else you do? Like there's a gap between what you pray for and how you live your day? If you've ever felt that, you're not alone, and it points to a really crucial distinction we're about to unpack.
At the heart of this whole thing are two core concepts, upasana and sadhana. Now, these might just sound like fancy words, but trust me, getting the difference between them can literally transform your spiritual practice from something you do to something you are.
Okay, so let's break it down. On one side, we have upasana. Think of this as your dedicated worship time. It's the rituals, the prayers. It's when you are speaking to God, usually in a specific sacred space like your prayer room. But then you have sadhana. And this is about living for God out in the real world. It's about self-control, about conscious living, and about putting those spiritual ideas into practice moment by moment.
To make this crystal clear, there's a really brilliant analogy that comes straight from the source material we're looking at. It's so simple, but it perfectly captures the relationship between these two practices.
And here it is, the big aha moment. Upasana is to chant the mantra. It's the recitation, the words, the devotion you express. But sadhana? Well, sadhana is to live the mantra. It's taking the very essence of your prayer and using it as the blueprint for how you act, how you think, and how you treat people.
And this quote just nails it, doesn't it? Speech and action are one. That is the mark of a practitioner. That is the heart and soul of sadhana. It's all about closing the gap, making sure the person you are in your prayer room is the exact same person you are out in the world. No contradictions.
So you see, this isn't about upasana versus sadhana. It's not a choice between worship or discipline. The real magic happens when you weave them together. Your worship in the morning fuels your disciplined actions all day, and your experiences during the day give your worship so much more meaning. So the big question is, how do we actually do that? Well, the sources give us a really clear roadmap.
So how do we build this bridge between our prayers and our lives? The source material doesn't just give us philosophy, it lays out a super practical framework built on 4 essential pillars that create a truly complete practice. And here they are. First, you have upasana, the worship we've been talking about. But then you add swadhyaya, which is self-study and reflection. Next comes sanyam, which is all about self-control. And finally, you have seva, or selfless service to others.
Now here's the really important part. These are not 4 separate boxes to check off a list. They're designed to work together, in synergy. Each pillar actually makes the other stronger, creating a spiritual practice that is way more powerful than just the sum of its parts.
And check this out, this is how it all connects. It's like a formula for supercharging your worship. If you want more radiance in your spiritual life, you add self-study, and the result is elevated thinking. If you want your practice to have a real impact, you add self-control, which purifies your character. And if you truly want to experience God, you add service, which makes your actual behavior divine. See how they all build on each other? It's pretty amazing.
Okay, so that's the big picture. But what does this actually look like on our Random Wednesday? How do you take these ideas and turn them into a real daily schedule? Let's get practical.
The structure is actually beautifully simple. You start your day with a dedicated block of time for upasana, your worship. That sets your intention. It centers you. But that's just the launch pad. The rest of your day becomes the practice field for sadhana. Every conversation, every task, every challenge is an opportunity for mindful living.
Now, let's zoom in on a really key part of that morning routine, dhyana, or meditation. And the source gives us a wonderful, accessible technique, especially if you're someone like me whose mind just wants to run 1,000,000 miles an hour the second you close your eyes. It's such a gentle, forgiving practice. First, you just gaze upon an image of your deity, really feeling that connection. Then, you gently close your eyes and try to hold that image in your mind. And here's the trick. The moment your mind wanders off, you don't get frustrated. You don't fight it. You simply gently open your eyes, look at the image again to refresh it in your mind, and then close them. And you just keep repeating that cycle, all while your chant continues in the background. It's an amazing way to train your focus without all the stress. So, we've gone from these big, powerful ideas all the way down to a practical morning meditation. But what's the end game here? What is the ultimate point of all this work? Where does this path lead?
When you boil it all down, the ultimate goal of this whole path is beautifully simple. It's not just about talking to God, it's about personal transformation. The whole point of the worship, the study, the self-control, and the service is to become a better person, a kinder, wiser, more compassionate human being.
And that brings us to what might be the most powerful line of all. To improve oneself is, in fact, the world's greatest service. Just think about that for a second. It suggests that the best thing you can do for the world, for your family, for your community, is to work on yourself. A better you literally helps create a better world.
So, as we wrap up, I want to leave you with this question. Let's make it real, not some big grand plan. Just, what is one small act of sadhana? One tiny moment of self-control? One small act of kindness? One conscious choice to align your actions with your beliefs that you can bring into your life today?
You know, in our nonstop, hyper-connected world, does finding even a moment of real peace feel, well, almost impossible? What if I told you there was a simple, super practical way to cut through all that mental noise? Well, today, that's exactly what we're digging into, a practice called Upasana, which just might be the path to clarity we've all been looking for. So let's start with the powerful question that's really at the heart of all this. It asks us to just pause for a second and really consider, is all our daily hustle serving some deeper purpose? Or are we just stuck on a hamster wheel of our own wants and needs? It's a challenging thought for sure, and it sets the stage perfectly for what's coming next. And that big question, it leads us right here. Because, before you can find a solution for inner peace, you have to look squarely at the problem. And for so many of us, that problem is this constant feeling of being a little lost, a little overwhelmed, and maybe disconnected from any real sense of purpose. To describe this internal state, the source material uses this incredibly powerful analogy. It talks about the filth of our cluttered, anxious thoughts and the stench of our negative feelings. I mean, wow, this mental and emotional pollution is exactly what blocks our path to clarity and peace. So how in the world do we start to clean up this internal mess? Well, the idea here is that without some kind of daily guide, a daily inspiration, we're just going to keep getting lost in the weeds. We need a consistent practice to keep us on track, to help us see where we've gone wrong, and to point us back toward our true potential. And that brings us right to the solution, Upasana. But the most important thing to get right away is that this isn't some complex, time-consuming, intimidating ritual. Nope, it's presented as a simple, accessible answer for a very cluttered, modern mind. So what is Upasana exactly? The word literally means to sit near. And the analogy is perfect. Think about it. When you sit near ice, you feel cold. When you sit near a fire, you feel its warmth, right? Well, in the very same way, the practice of Upasana is about intentionally sitting near the divine so you can absorb its positive qualities, like peace, clarity, and compassion. To make it even more real, let's compare our inner world to a house. Without a practice like this, our mind can become a cluttered, messy, kind of smelly home. But with Upasana, you're essentially sweeping it clean every single day. The mental filth gets replaced by order. The negative stench is replaced by a divine fragrance. And that feeling of burnout and a burning mind? It gets replaced by a soothing balm of peace. Of course, I can hear it now. The immediate reaction for so many of us is, I don't have time for this, or this sounds way too complicated for me. And you're not wrong to think that. Those are the biggest barriers in our modern lives, time and complexity, and this next part tackles them head on. And there's a wonderfully reassuring way to think about this. A teacher doesn't fail a little kid for drawing a crooked line when they're first learning to write. Of course not. They know that consistent practice is what leads to perfection. The exact same principle applies here. What matters isn't getting it perfect on day one, it's just the sincere, consistent effort that counts. And this, right here, is where it gets incredibly practical and honestly, revolutionary for a lot of people. You see the traditional, strict path to worship on one side. It can seem pretty daunting. Fixed times, a special pure place, complex rituals. But now look at this easy path designed for our lives. Instead of a fixed time, you just need 5 to 10 minutes whenever you can find them. Instead of a dedicated temple, you can do it anywhere, home, office, even traveling. And instead of complicated purification, you just wash your hands and face. The only real requirement? A calm mind and an open heart. Just like that, all the barriers are gone. Okay, so if it's really that easy, what do you actually do? Well, let's get down to brass tacks. This next section breaks it all down into an actionable, 10-minute guide that literally anyone can follow. Here they are, the 5 simple steps. First up, Sukhasana. Just find a comfortable seat with a straight spine. Easy enough. Second, Shant Mun. You start to calm your mind. Third, Atmiya Hriday. This is about cultivating a real, heartfelt connection. Fourth, Prarthana. You offer a simple prayer. And finally, fifth, Nam Jap. You just repeat a divine name or a mantra. That's it. That's the whole practice right there. Now for that second step, calming the mind, which, let's be honest, is probably the hardest part for most of us. There's this beautiful and simple suggestion. You just gently tell yourself, at this moment, it is just me and my God. There is no one else. That one single thought helps create a quiet, sacred space, and it really helps push away all the worries of the day. And to make this even more approachable, just remember these tips. The most important one, don't judge yourself. And always focus on consistency over how long you do it. Be flexible. If you miss a day, no big deal. Just catch up when you can. And make it personal. Create your own prayers. Don't worry about things like prayer beads unless you really want to use them. It's all about making this practice work for you. So, after all that, how long does this whole transformative practice actually take? About 10 minutes. That's it. Seriously. Less time than it takes to scroll through your social media feed or wait for your morning coffee. 10 minutes a day to systematically clean your inner house. So, where does this simple 10-minute habit lead? That's what we're going to look at in this final section, connecting this small daily action to a much, much larger life-changing goal. It's really important to see this 5-step practice as the foundation. It's like the first level, designed to help you build a steady, comfortable habit. Think of it like pouring the concrete for a new house. Once that foundation is solid, there's a clear path forward, a next step to deepen your journey. Because the real goal of Upasana isn't just to feel calm for 10 minutes a day. It's about how that simple practice of sitting near the divine begins to slowly but surely align your entire life, your thoughts, your character, your actions, with that source of peace and goodness. That alignment, that is the true art of living. And so, we end right back where we began, with a question for you. This path is described as the way to an Ujjwal Jivan, an enlightened and brilliant life. The path is simple, the time commitment is small, and the potential reward is absolutely immense. So, the only question left is, will you take that first step? You know, in a world that feels so chaotic and, frankly, broken a lot of the time, what if the real solution isn't somewhere out there but right inside of us? So today, we're going to dive into the Sadhana movement, a philosophy that has this pretty radical blueprint for changing ourselves, and by doing that, changing the entire world. Right, so the Sadhana philosophy doesn't exactly ease you in with a comforting thought. Nope. Instead, it forces you to look right at a pretty stark diagnosis of where we are right now, a world that, it claims, is basically teetering on the edge of a full-blown crisis. And it does not pull any punches. I mean, the source opens with this incredibly dramatic statement. It's meant to grab you and immediately show you how urgent this is. This isn't just about small problems. It's a declaration that the crisis we're in is deep. It's existential. Now, what's really interesting here is how the source breaks down this burning hell. It says that all the chaos we see on the outside, the exploitation, the aggression, that's directly tied to a crisis on the inside. We're restless, unbalanced, and we've lost our values. And here's the real kicker. It claims that everything we're currently trying to do to fix it, it's just not working. And this right here, this is where the entire argument pivots. After laying out all these external problems, the text asks this one simple question that just flips everything on its head. It challenges all our assumptions about where we should even start looking for an answer. And that question leads us right to the absolute core idea of the sadhana movement. It argues that we've been looking in the completely wrong direction this whole time. The problem, it says, isn't out there. It's in here. Okay, so here's the bottom line. The injustice, the fighting, the chaos we see all over the world. According to this, it's just a giant projection of the chaos that's already inside each individual human mind. So if you want to fix the world, you have to start by fixing the mind. That is the absolute foundation of this entire philosophy.
Which brings us to the main event, sadhana. Now, the text is super clear about this. This isn't some vague, mystical ritual. It defines sadhana as a practical, disciplined way of managing yourself. It's the actual conscious work of getting a handle on your thoughts, your feelings, and your actions so you can rebuild your inner world from the ground up.
So, if sadhana is the tool, then how in the world do you actually use it? Well, the movement lays out a really clear, structured, three-part path for this whole mental and spiritual reconstruction project. And this framework, it's a three-step path that just makes a lot of sense. It starts with upasana. Think of this as the foundation. It's about recognizing some kind of higher power or universal law to give your life a solid anchor, something to hold on to. Then, on top of that foundation, you build with sadhana. That's the daily disciplined practice of actually living a balanced, principled life. And finally, once your own house is in order, you get to ardhana. That's the peak where your own inner light is so strong, you can't help but use it to serve and inspire other people. Now, the text is smart. It kind of knows that for a modern audience, words like worship might raise some eyebrows. So it makes a huge effort to frame this whole thing not as blind faith, but as a rational, repeatable science. And this slide just lays it out perfectly. It takes on the common idea of prayer, right? That you're basically just asking a deity for stuff, like a cosmic vending machine. But the movement's view is totally different. It sees prayer as a scientific tool, not for getting things from the outside, but for waking up the incredible power that's already sleeping inside every single one of us. And to back up this whole science claim, the source makes a really big point. This is not some new age idea they just cooked up. They present it as a timeless, universal science of living that has been used successfully for centuries.
And I mean, just look at this list. The source makes a huge point by putting all these names together. You've got these major spiritual founders, Buddha, Jesus, Mohammed, right next to a groundbreaking scientist like Marie Curie, and world-changing activists like Gandhi and Helen Keller. The point they're making is actually pretty profound. What connects all of them isn't their religion or their job. It's that they all mastered their inner world. They each practiced their own kind of sadhana to do what seemed impossible.
Okay, so this all sounds massive, right? Historic even. But the final section of the text brings this giant mission right back down to earth, down to a starting point that's personal, manageable, and something you can actually do. This quote is so important. It takes this huge, scary idea of changing the world and shrinks it down to something you can actually handle. Your world, the source says, is the one you can literally touch. Your family, your friends, the people you interact with. Suddenly, the mission feels possible because it's local. So where do you start with that local mission? Well, it starts with just one person, the number one. And yeah, that person is you. All of this massive global transformation, this whole blueprint for a new world, it all kicks off with the quiet, internal work of one individual. It starts with you. So the ultimate takeaway here is beautifully simple. The goal isn't really to get a bunch of followers. It's to train people in what the text calls the art of living. Master yourself first, and then, just by being you, by your own example, you'll naturally inspire the people in your life to start their own journey. It's a ripple effect, starting from one single point of inner calm. And really, that's what this whole philosophy boils down to. If the power to change the world is truly inside each of us, then the only question left, the one you see right here, is for you. What's your first step going to be?
All right, let's talk about sadhana. Now, I want you to forget about dusty old scrolls or really complicated rituals for a minute. We're going to look at this as an incredibly practical, modern tool for bringing some serious order to the chaos of your everyday life.
Think about it. We are just bombarded, right? Nonstop information, distractions, things pulling at our attention. It is so easy to feel completely overwhelmed. Well, that exact feeling, that's what sadhana is designed to fix. It's a way to finally tune out all that noise and lock into your own clear internal signal.
So what even is sadhana, really? Well, at its core, it's not some finish line you cross. It's a path you decide to walk every single day. It's a conscious discipline you take on for your own inner world, not for anybody else.
To put it really simply, sadhana just means life discipline. It's the art of looking at all the messy, reactive parts of yourself. You know, the chaotic thoughts, the roller coaster feelings, the impulsive actions, and consciously, deliberately bringing them all into harmony. It's about making that switch from internal noise to internal clarity. And it follows this really clear 3-step progression. First, you start by getting a handle on your negativity, those basic, reactive, almost animal-like instincts we all have. Then, once you've done that, you work on actively increasing positivity, really leaning into your humanity, things like compassion. And the final step, you elevate your life to what you could call a divine level, and you do that through service to others. It's a pretty amazing transformation, and it all happens from the inside out.
Okay, so that sounds great, but how do we actually start walking this path? Well, it all begins with a few simple foundational practices that train both your mind and your spirit. Let's dive into 3 of them.
First up, we've got mantra writing. Now, this is not about mindlessly scribbling down some words over and over. It's an active exercise in deep concentration. By actually writing a mantra and focusing on the meaning behind each word, you're literally training your mind to stay centered, and you're purifying your own thought patterns.
Next up is something called Dev Darshan, which basically means sacred visits. The idea here is super simple. Just once a week, go to a place that feels peaceful and sacred to you. It could be a temple, a church, or even just a quiet spot in a park. The whole point is to just soak in that calm atmosphere. It helps you cultivate humility, goodwill, and just a real sense of inner peace.
And the third one is swadhyaya, or self-study. I want you to think of this like a gym for your mind, right? You lift weights to build your muscles. Well, in the same way, you engage with inspiring, uplifting books and texts to build your mental and spiritual strength. It's literally how you train your thoughts to aim higher. And the method for doing this is so practical, anyone can do it. It's a simple 15-minute daily exercise. That's it. You spend 5 minutes just slowly reading something inspiring. Then you take 5 minutes to reflect on how that idea actually applies to your life. And you finish with 5 minutes of planning exactly how you're going to put it into practice. It takes this big, abstract wisdom and turns it into concrete action, all in just 15 minutes.
Now, these initial practices, they don't just exist in a vacuum. They're actually built on top of an incredibly powerful foundation, a framework for self-control known as Sanyam.
And this is absolutely key. Self-control isn't just one giant, vague effort of willpower. No, it's a solid structure that's built on 4 distinct pillars. And each one of those pillars helps you get a handle on a critical area of your life.
And here it is. This is basically the complete roadmap for self-mastery. The 4 big domains we need to learn to control are our senses, our thoughts, our wealth, and you guessed it, our time. If you can master these, you can master yourself.
The first pillar, Indriya Sanyam, it starts right at the source, our most primal urges. The whole idea is that by learning to discipline the tongue, say through something like fasting, and by managing our sensual energy, we build this foundational level of self-control that makes it so much easier to manage all our other impulses.
Next, we have Vichar Sanyam, which is all about thought control. And this is so critical because our inner world literally creates our outer reality. The source material talks about an inner radiance or tej. You can think of it like your personal charisma, your vibe, your aura. Positive thoughts make it brighter, and that actually increases your positive influence on the world. But negative thoughts like deceit or anger, they just dim it. Then there's Artha Sanyam, getting a handle on your finances. But look, this is not about being cheap or stingy. It's about reclaiming your focus. When you plug the leaks, the money spent on fast fashion, addictions, or just trying to show off, you're not just saving money. You are taking back your attention from the huge industries that are designed to capture. And finally, Samay Sanyam, time control. In our crazy, distraction-filled world, controlling your time is really about controlling your attention. Our time is the one resource we can never, ever get back. So this pillar is about honoring that time. And the tip here is so simple, but so powerful. Plan tomorrow's tasks the night before.
So after hearing all of this, the big question is, where do you even start? The key is not to get overwhelmed. Sadhana is not about being perfect. It's about the practice. It's all about just taking one small, manageable step.
And this quote, this just reframes the entire purpose beautifully. See, discipline isn't about depriving yourself. It's about strengthening yourself so you actually have more to give. It's a huge shift in priority. We take care of our duties to others first, and that, in turn, is what brings true meaning and fulfillment to our own lives. So I'm going to leave you with this question. Forget trying to master all 4 pillars by tomorrow. What is one small, simple act of life discipline you can start with today? Seriously. Maybe it's that 5-minute reading, or maybe it's just skipping one impulse buy. Because that one small step, that's where the entire journey of sadhana begins.